Turbo! What up, Turboers? Alright, so today we're going to walk you through making a game. It's going to be a clone of Atari's hit Breakout. And yeah, it will get pretty complicated towards the end, but to start, it'll be quite simple to kind of give you everything you need to know to make a Turbo game. So let's get started. Here you see my terminal. I have a little tutorials folder. What we're going to want to do is init a new project. So I'm going to call it breakout-clone. And Turbo very quickly has made my project. So the editor I use is called Cursor, which will actually come in handy because it has a nice little GPT in it. And I'm going to open that up and pull up my Turbo breakout clone file. So okay, we're going to kind of show you the basics of Turbo, syntax, some programming stuff to start. So bear with me. We'll get to the juicy stuff probably in like one or two other videos. But real quick, just for the beginners, I'm going to show you how to adjust this text macro, because as you see, we have hello world here. And we're going to want to put something else in it. And the reason for that is because we're going to sort of animate that thing. So let me show you what we have so far right here. Turbo run W. Oh, my bad. Got a CD into the file. All right, turbo run dash W, boom. Now it's compiling the file. And there we go, we have hello world. So with this text file, this text macro, there's actually kind of a shorthand for it that you see right here. But there's also kind of a longer form way to write things. And I will show you that real quick. I'm just copying this from the docs. If you write something like this and add an X and Y in color and font, you will see you get a slightly different location. So what I'm going to do is just draw a little heart here, and you will see why I'm doing that soon. And I'm going to put it at 0. I'm going to put it at 0. It's kind of the top left corner. You see it's a little high up there, so why don't we put it at 5? 5 down there, 5 down there, boom. Okay, we got our little heart. I don't know if I love this font, so I'm going to delete that, save. And as you can see, the hot reloading makes this super easy. So there's a few concepts you're going to want to know for turbo programming or any type of game programming or software programming in general. If you know it, bear with me. We'll get through them fast. If you don't, time to listen up. The first is functions. All right. Now, functions are just commands that you pass a program or a computer. And I don't know, Google it if you want a fancy definition. But functions just make your game or program do stuff. All right. So what you're seeing here is we have a few functions. There's a turbo go command, which gets the game to start, I guess. And then there's a text command, which, as we see, populates a text. So you can write your own functions, and we'll be doing a decent amount of that in this tutorial coming up in subsequent videos. So you're going to want to learn how to do this, and I'll show you right now. So to try to illustrate how functions can be called like this, or you can sort of like extract them into their own functions, why don't we write a similar function and print 2 lines of text? So I'm going to write a function called function. And to do that, you just press Fn, art underscore plus underscore 1. All right. And I'm going to copy this over because this is a function. And I'm going to go heart plus 1. I'm going to move this to 10. And I'm going to move this to 10. And if I wrote this correctly, when we save it, you'll see it populate right here. Boom, save. Yeah, it looks like I got an error. And that is because the syntax you're going to want to use is actually heart plus 1, parentheses open, parentheses close. So there we go. We got it. And did we get heart plus 1? Oh, we didn't. And that's because you have to call your function. All right, so heart plus 1. I'm calling it here. And there you go. You see it right there. So there are a few important functions that kind of go into almost every turbo program. And the first of those is turbo config. So as you can see here, the shorthand for it is turbo --cfg exclamation point. And what I'm doing here is I just copied this from the docs. So if you go into Turbo Demos, which we can leave a link to, or our Turbo Docs, we have these commands written out. And what Turbo Config does is it basically gives, who's ever reading your program a high-level kind of understanding of what your game's about. So it's metadata. You put the name here. So I already populated this in between these, breakout. You got your version number. That's if you're trying to sort of make updates and keep people posted on it. You can put your name here under author. And then you can put a description and settings. And I think what's most important is you're going to want to set your resolution. So I actually set this resolution at 128 by 128. The reason I did that is because I'm porting this over from Pico 8, and this is more or less their resolution. So it'll make this window here kind of look like a rectangle. Let me try to do this and see if it works. If you change this to like 244, 244 by 328 or something crazy, you can see we kind of get this like weirder rectangle. And I think there's a standard sort of landscape style resolution you can use that you can find in our docs, because we have a bunch of landscape style kind of web games in the demos repo. But anyway, the next important function you're going to want to know is turbo init. Okay, so turbo init exclamation point. So you see here kind of some weird stuff like struct and screen, etc., etc. Don't let this intimidate you. Basically, what you're doing here is you're defining GameState, and GameState is kind of like, you can think of it like your little folder where you're going to keep stuff that you want to save within your game. It's one way to sort of like manage the variables that change frame by frame in your game. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't like overthink what GameState is right now. I would sort of just know that this is some code you're going to want to copy. And over the next few videos, we can kind of walk you through what GameState is and how you're going to use it, okay? And it's really not that bad. Once you've kind of written a few things to state and read a few things from state, you'll sort of get into the habit of how to use it. And you can always use kind of a GPT like what this editor has if you get confused with it. But lastly, as we saw before, you're always going to have Turbo Go. And Turbo Go basically runs your game every frame. So the way games are made up, there's a different frame per kind of second, and Turbo Go will run every second, more or less. There's some more technical explanations. You can call Josiah if you need it, but what you need to know is that as you're making updates frame by frame, you can use Turbo Go. And what you're going to want to do is load your state into Turbo Go. So those are sort of the main Turbo functions that many of your games will have. Not all of your games. I do think there are probably ways to make games without these functions, but this is what we're going to work off of as sort of our scaffolding for our breakout game. Okay, so enough about like all the high-level functions. You probably don't give a hoot right now anyway. Let's do something that kind of shows you how these functions work and put something on your screen. So let's go back and we'll start typing stuff together here. And let's write real quick the heart text function that we wrote before. So we got mute state. Let's go text. We're going to put our little heart here. Do x equals 5, y equals 5, and color equals 0x00ff00ff. And there we go. If you save it, you should see your little heart pop up. Pretty cool. All right, so what I want to do is I want to see if I can animate this heart, if I can make it move around. And this is going to actually walk you through how state works. So an easy way to do this is I'm going to set up what's called a variable under the x, or rather in the x number 5 here. If you don't know what variables are, they're basically just like variables. I mean, I guess if you haven't done algebra, there are things that can change. But once again, this is the kind of stuff where like just use it, do it a few times, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So I'm not going to get too caught up in the theory. But what I want to do is set x to a variable, and I'm going to use state to do that. So going into GameState, you see that there's sort of the screen thing. I don't know what that's doing. I'm going to just put a comma there and move on. Put a comma and move down, and I'm going to set an x position variable. So x pos is what I'm going to call it. X underscore POS. And what you have to do in Rust, which is the language we're using, is you have to define kind of what type of variable thing it is. I use ChatGPT a lot to help me with this, but in this case, I know I need an integer, so that's what I'm going to use. And the thing that I'm going to use for integer is I32. So I'm going to write I32. And then, as you can see here under self, you can set an initial value for your variable. So I'm going to do x pos. You don't use equal here. This kind of gets me sometimes. You use the colon, and I'm going to put x pos 1. All right. So you created your x pos variable. You created your first value for it, kind of all here. And this will be a very common pattern we follow. So just stick with me, and you'll sort of pick it up secondhand pretty soon in subsequent videos. And now we're going to use it. So we already have state loaded. So in this kind of boilerplate code we got before, and boilerplate just means like you use it all the time. I don't know. It's like I don't even really know the definition of boilerplate, but it's just always around. So anyway, boilerplate is this code you have right here. Let mute state. This loads your state. So now you have access to this stuff up here. And so I'm going to call it. And the way you do that is you go state dot and then the thing you want. So state dot xpos. Remember to add a semicolon here. And you have state.xpos. So you notice it went blank, and sometimes this happens when you mess with initial states. Again, go in our Discord and ask Josiah why, but what I know you're supposed to do here is press Command R. And you'll see that your new kind of variable here pops up. So we have state xpos 5, let's set it to 1, you see it moved over, all right? So if you ever run into a problem, just click Command R. And what you're going to want to do below this, or at least what we're going to do to move this thing around, is we're going to change this variable. So the way you do that is you go state.xpos, and we're just going to increment it by 1 every frame. And we're going to do that by using some programming shorthand, plus equals 1. And that basically just adds 1 to the thing to the left of the plus equals. And what we have to remember to do as well is save the state after every frame. So state save is going to let us save that. We're going to save it, and look, right when we saved it, now you see it goes off the side. Boom. So you just made your first little game thing. You could probably imagine this being like a shell that Mario is shooting at someone, or a bullet or something like that, a missile. But as you can see, very easy once you get the hang of these little functions to start moving stuff around. And what I'm doing here to get it to repopulate is pressing Command R. So that is everything for the basics. From here, we're going to start doing some cool stuff. We're going to turn this little heart into a ball and kind of make that kind of bounce around, and I'll show you how to do that in the next video.